Just about any form of academic writing where we do more than summary, we're doing analysis, right? We're analyzing the content. Like maybe the author is wrong, or maybe what the author says connects to what another author said, or so on. But when we talk about like original research and field work and content analysis, that this is something different. The key here, if you're trying to think about doing some content analysis and field work, the whole secret to this is you turn qualitative data into something quantitative. In other words, something that before was not measured becomes measurable. This is abstract, so let's just look at some examples of it. All right. Not content analysis. You read Romeo and Juliet and you write some sort of analytical essay. Like it shows how cognitive inflexibility leads to bad outcomes. I mean that's analysis, but it's not analysis of the content in the way that we're doing because it's not measurable. All right. But how about this? The interrogative nature of Romeo and Juliet is shown through all the questions in the book, right? It's twice as many as in Shakespeare's other work. Now something that was not measured has become measured. All right. And if you apply this to field work, well, saying, hey, they clapped really loudly. Well, yeah, okay, but that's kind of qualitative, right? It sounded loud to you. Well, you know what makes it measurable? Why don't we measure the decibel readings, all right? So, there's some steps we can go through if we want to get to this point where we can make some measurements, right? We have to start out by identifying a sample, all right? And maybe that's a media sample. Like I'm going to look at movies from this year, all right? Or I'm going to look at tweets. Maybe there's a particular group of people that you're studying, college freshmen, something like that. Maybe there's a particular location that you're interested in. All right, once you've got your sample, then you just need to figure out what you're measuring and how. Like if you're looking at violence in movies, what's violence? What qualifies? If we're measuring flirtatious behavior in some location on campus, what qualifies as flirtatious? If someone smiles and waves, is that flirtation? You need to figure these things out. And then finally, once you've got something in mind, you need some kind of coding system, right? Like there's all kinds of violence. There's bloody stuff, and then there's I don't know, and others. Is maybe B for bloody or something like that, or G for gun violence. Some kind of system where you can tabulate things, because finally, eventually, to measure stuff, we're going to need to do something with all the data, right? This is I think what turns people off on content analysis or fieldwork sometimes is the idea that do I really have to kind of note all this stuff down and do some math? The good news is that because of technology these days, you don't necessarily have to. More on that in a moment. But in the meantime, some basic tips is whatever you're measuring, try to use widely accepted measurements. Like what qualifies as violence? Well, I don't. That's hard to say. And you got to be careful about this. There's this example of this website, Movie Guide. It's very very kind of conservative site, and they said that the movie Judy, that's about the actress Judy Garland, contains violence because she falls down drunk at one point. Is that violence? I mean, it's hard to say. But if you go to something like the Motion Picture Association's website or an independent organization like Screen It, and you use their definition of violence, that sets you up for success, right? That's something that most people can accept. On that note, there's a lot of tools that can help us not only to process data, but even just to gather it. Like how, what are you ever trying to measure? How hot or loud or close or whatever. More often than not, our smartphones can just measure these things for us. And there are also a lot of computer programs that can process data for us. Some of them require a little training to use, like PStat. Other things, though, you just kind of just type it in and the machine will process it for you. I'm familiar in particular with things that analyze language, and there's all kinds of programs where you can just copy a chunk of text in there and it'll tell you all kinds of stuff about it. I mean, these are just some examples. There's so many. So, before you decide against doing field work or content analysis, at least take a look at some of the tools that are available to you. You might be surprised by how easy some of them are to use. And finally, once you get your data, like always, just be mindful of correlation versus causation. It's easy to see that there's intersections and assume that one thing is causing the other. And here's a funny example of this guy, this Harvard law student. He has a whole book about just kind of funny correlation versus causations like we see here.